Hello, welcome to GBS. We thought we'd have a look at a different area of the business today. So we're in the workshop, which is a key part of the business. We do a lot of different things in the workshop, mainly on our own cars, but we get involved in quite a diverse range of different projects. We thought we'd share this one with you, have a bit of a look what we've done on here. I'm with Matt, who's our workshop manager, who a lot of customers have met, spoke to. That's technical support, asking how to do stuff. So we thought we'd just talk you through a project. So we've got a 1983 Vauxhall Chevette HS, which we've done a full fuel injection conversion on, and we'll talk you through what we've done, how we've done it. Yeah, by all means.
So
let's pop the bonnet, Matt.
Yeah, well, that's on your side, but
So the brief was to put modern fuel injection on a car, originally from 1983 that we've been on twin Webers and that, make it drive like a modern car. So we've put a few things on it, for full fuel injection, power steering and a couple of bits. So what have we done then, Matt?
yeah, so I mean, fundamentally, the car's obviously got a 2-litre XC engine, which wouldn't have come in this car as standard. And this was previously running on Webers, and there's nothing wrong with that. That was working. But obviously the benefit of going fuel injection from a drivability, fuel economy, and a little bit of power is obviously quite noticeable. So that's what we did. So essentially we stripped all the carburetors off the system, and it's quite a big swap really, because you've got to consider that you're now going to a kind of high pressure system in terms of fuel. So we've got to go right back to the fuel system, got to modify the fuel tank, we've got to put a series of pumps to make sure that we've got the right fuel pressure coming down to the fuel rail. So yeah, there's that. Obviously then we've got to install the throttle bodies, find a suitable manifold, obviously air filter location, working with the space that you've got in terms of clearance for the likes of your master cylinder and hoses, etc. Can be quite challenging. In fact, in this installation, it was actually a little bit easier than the setup that the customer previously had with the Webers. The fact that the inlet ports on this particular engine go in at kind of like a 22 degree directly into the side of the head, that meant that the bodies can kind of come up at this nice angle. And we've kind of done really well in the fact that we've got clearance everywhere, enough clearance for the engine movement, whereas if we'd got Webers, we would have been foul in some of these areas. Now what that did mean, we've had to do some custom work in terms of designing and relocating the likes of his brake master cylinder, and relocating the reservoir, which ordinarily would mount here, but in terms of space, and that's worked out to be quite a nice little solution. So yeah, well, the fuel system,
we coil on plug.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, coil pack rather than the distributor that was originally on.
Yeah, so this engine, even though it's a modern engine, would have had a distributor. Obviously it's gone to a kind of Ford style coil pack, which is a wasted spark setup, which is perfectly fine. Custom leads, and then you've got the all ECU side of it. So it's got a Emerald K6 Plus ECU, which is controlling the entire engine, along with a Raychem Motorsport Spec wiring harness, and then that's then all embedded into the dash for his rev counter. All his fans are controlled by that, obviously the fuel pumps, etc.
So we can control the fan temperature. We're kind of an on temperature and an off temperature. Yeah. So it gives you a lot more control of the cooling system and a lot of visibility on what the engine's doing from data logging and so on, which you previously wouldn't have had.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely the way to go. Obviously 90% of the cars that we do, if not 95% of the cars now, are all fuel injected. Certainly modern standards in terms of requiring fuel efficiency and emissions have required it, but again, retrofitting the modern system to the cars for drivability, cruise and fuel economy is massive. It's definitely worth doing.
Yeah, so we've got parts wise then that we've supplied. We've got our own ATR throttle bodies, all manufactured in-house. The Bosch Green injector, so there's plenty of headroom there for future tuning if we wanted to. 3-bar fuel regulator, nicely packaged out the way and neat. As Matt said, the coil pack's there. Then it's our own standalone harness. So we developed a dedicated harness for this type of application where you convert in an older car. So it makes it really simple. It's got all the stuff you need for the fuel injection, but very easily ties into the old wiring loom.
Yeah, that worked really, really well. I mean, obviously it's designed for an inline 4 cylinder engine, but that would work with, you know, Vauxhall, all the Fords in terms of Duratec,
Pintos, anything.
Yeah, basically anything that's an inline 4 that you want to run wasted spark. You know, the reality is, you could modify that and run coil on plug, and you could expand it, but straight out of the box, it's very, very straightforward. There's just a few wires to connect to certain things, and the rest of the work's done. And again, that's a nice Raychem Motorsport level loom. We sell quite a few of those, don't we?
Yeah, we've got them in all sorts of application. And it's all packaged nice through the bulkhead. We'll have a look inside. So one of the briefs was they didn't want it to look different from the original, so we tried to keep all the interior, the boot, where we've done the fuel system and that, as close to original as possible.
Yeah.
So we'll have a run through the fuel system.
Okay, so one of the challenges with doing any car that's obviously got an old tank is we now need to obviously make sure that we are providing high pressure fuel, so it's like 3.5 bar of fuel pressure to the actual fuel rail. In this instance, we also need to make sure, because the car's tank and the fuel's moving around, we can't afford for there to be any break in that supply to the fuel, otherwise the car will stall. Obviously with a carburettor, you've got a float bowl and a certain amount of fuel that will slowly go down as you go around a corner. Obviously on fuel injections, you've not got that option. So we mount a swirl pot, which essentially is a buffer tank for the fuel. But to get it into there, we obviously then run a lifter pump, which pumps it from the main tank, and that ensures that this little tank is always full. And then the high pressure fuel is taken from the bottom of this tank, and that obviously then sends the fuel pressure down the tunnel to the fuel rail, down to the regulator. And then obviously any excessive pressure is then sent back, returned, and that comes back into the swirl pot. So effectively, any one time this will always be full, and if, for example, this gets really, really low and this doesn't pick up any fuel, then you're in a situation where you've always got this buffer. Primarily designed for more heavy driving, certainly if you're doing track days. But it's something that we would fit as standard with any fuel injection system.
Yeah, pretty much on all the cars, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can get certain applications where we'd make a custom tank with that all built in, and we've done that, and that's an option. But retrofit into the customer's previous tank, I mean, in this instance, we had to remove the tank, obviously clean it out, and then we ended up just welding some extra ports on this tank for that.
The other thing we've done, which we always do on all the cars, especially on the fuel injection system, that the fuel pumps that are controlled by the ECU.
Yeah.
The amount of fuel that the high pressure pumps put out is quite staggering, and if you were ever to have an accident or a pipe burst or anything like that, you want your fuel pump to stop. So that's linked to the ECU. So when you initially turn the ignition on, it primes the system and then looks for a crank signal, which enables the pump. Yeah. So if the engine stops running for any reason, whether it's pipe burst, you've had an accident or anything, it stops the fuel system straight away, so it prevents any fire. So it's a safety feature that's built into everything that we always fit. Yeah,
we see cars that people just wire them in as they think, but yeah, there's a certain reason that we wire them in such a way.
It is quite scary, the volume of fuel that comes out of the system.
Yeah. But yeah, obviously this access panel then covers all this in, so it's nice and discreet. We've managed to do this without drilling and putting any more holes in its actual bodywork. So some of the locations and stuff has actually been governed by what space we've had. And obviously wherever possible, we will try not to drill the car. You know, so if he does ever want to put it back to how it previously was, then there's no evidence that that's been in there.
We've kept all the original 1980s panels, carpet, everything. So
yeah,
it's hard to actually tell anything's been done to it.
No, I mean, obviously this panel to get back in there is a nice tight fit, and then you can see the edge of this swirl pot. And again, it's a conversation. The customer's quite happy to make something to enclose that. But that was a consideration and a discussion. Again, we managed to pick up on existing holes even for this,
so
and we made this custom swirl pot for this application.
So that was part of our fabrication side.
Yeah.
Knocked that up. Matt and the team in the workshop did a drawing of how they wanted it, and we had that made. So again, it's all done in-house.
Well, the beauty is, from me drawing something on a piece of paper, I can have it within a couple of hours, which is quite unique. And that's the same if I need something custom CNC machining, permitting I can get on the machine.
Yeah.
Then we can turn stuff around instantly.
It's nice that we're not sort of governed. You end up looking for a part, having to buy one off the shelf, and you're kind of governed by a design or something, whereas we can be a bit more free thinking in how we want to do stuff, and think, well, that would be the perfect way to do it, so well, let's do it that way because we can.
But that extends from all sorts, doesn't it? I mean, we've done projects where, you know, custom fabrication, a lot of steel work, but then we've also done stuff where we've made custom carbon fibre and GRP.
Yeah.
So like when we have cars come in and we need to relocate lights, we can just make another light mount, you know, a couple of days and it's done. So, you know, it's nice having everything within one house. Very rarely do we have to outsource. I think obviously in terms of outsourcing this, we bought the ECU, we had the HT leads made.
Everything else other than hose clips, rubber pipe,
yeah.
A Bosch fuel pump is pretty much in-house. And should we have a look at the interior? And
I mean, the thing to say is obviously we got it all done, then it went on the dyno, so it's all been fully dyno tuned. I can't remember the horsepower, we've got it somewhere, but it made
198.
Yeah, it made good power.
So you generally find the injection, you don't typically get a massive gain in peak power,
no,
but the real driving experience and the real world conditions, the mid-range torque, the cold start, light throttling traffic, where you actually use the car most of the time, that's where the biggest benefits come.
Yeah.
On top of that, you've got the fuel economy and just that reliability. I think anyone that knows Webers, as much as we love them and the sound of them and that, they're always a bit of a faff, a bit of a pain, especially on the newer fuels and stuff with them sort of clogging up and stuff over time.
And then you leave the car in your garage and all you can smell is fuel. And
but
no, you're right. I think we made a couple of more horsepower than what it made before on the Webers. We've just done a Pinto powered car where we've done a very similar conversion actually. So we put a Pinto engine with some cams on our ATR throttles, again on an Emerald ECU, and that made like 3 horsepower more. But the drivability, the customer is absolutely over the moon. He can't believe the night and day difference between as it was before. It's not all about power. No, it's about drivability.
The old Pintos on cams and Webers, bottom end was always a nightmare. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but you lose most of that and you have a very drivable car.
I drove them back to back and night and day. The Pinto on the throttle bodies just felt like a 2-litre Z-Tech. It just felt so modern.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, isn't it?
Bringing these old cars up to modern standards, making them usable for today. Talking of usability as well, we've actually added power steering on this car, which we'll have a look at the interior where we've mounted these.
So
have a look at the steering.
We'll just have a quick look at the installation. So I mean, in terms of this, we obviously had to have all the dash out. There's a lot of wiring, etc. But we've kind of compromised really with mounting the ECU. It's not actually visible unless you kind of kneel down, but the ECU, in terms of how it connects and the lights show that it's working, is all visible, and that works kind of really well. Actually, behind here you've got like a whole wiper motor mechanism system, so you're kind of governed by not being able to use this space. What we have got behind this access panel is a series of relays and fuses that's all for the ECU and for the various different applications. And then obviously it integrates into the clock, so we need to understand what the feed is for the clock to make sure that the tacho works. Again, fan and fuel pump are all covered by the ECU anyway. We have put a little override switch, so if the customer, you can basically turn the ECU off with a little override switch if he wants to do that.
Security feature.
As an extra security. That was in there previously, so we decided to keep that for him.
We generally try and keep the ECUs in the cabin, although they are waterproof and pretty good. It's a nice place to put them. They stay a lot cleaner. All your connection pins and everything don't corrode. So wherever possible, we'll keep it in there.
But the Emerald ECU that we use is relatively compact. Most other ECUs of a similar specification, they start getting on the kind of large side, and then you are really limited where you can put them. But no, I'm happy with that. You can't really see it unless you're bending down. And then there's no other traces in the car. Obviously, a little bit of work to make all the different gauges work. So we've now gone, obviously, because customer had a low pressure fuel gauge. Obviously, that doesn't work now, so that's something that the customer's going to maybe change at a later date. But other than that, everything works perfectly fine. Starts on the key. As you'd expect.
Well, if we have a look around the other side, So what we're finding quite often on a lot of the older cars, as you increase the performance, you then tend to put more bigger tyres on, stickier tyres and everything, and it makes the steering a lot heavier. You've got a lot more grip than the original tyres back in the 80s. So what we did on this, the customer asked us, could we have a look if we could fit power steering, which we've done on a few cars now. I think the first one we did was on an old AC, then we did the Escorts that we did for MST, putting all the column in with the power steering. So we use the same setup, so it's an electric power steering that's actually torque sensitive and controlled by the vehicle speed, so it varies itself and the amount of assistance you get according to how fast you're going, and then you can preset the amount of assistance from the off as well, so you maintain that sort of feel. Because I don't know about you, but some of the ones I've driven, they lose all the characteristics and the feel on the car because they're over assisted. And
it's the first time I've driven the one that we've done with the GPS speed sensor that obviously outputs a pulse. Because this car's got no speed sensors in general, we've obviously gone with the GPS unit, and it works just perfectly. You know, you've not got a massive amount of assistance, but it's just right when you're driving around the car park. But as soon as you get up to 40-50 mile an hour, that assistance more or less drops off, and then you just get that actual natural feel.
Yeah, which you lose on a lot of the systems because it just keeps the assistance, and you just tend to be like wandering around a lot.
I mean, you can override it, you can put it on manual, and then there's a little controller for your resistance. What you end up if you don't do it through the wheel speed sensors is you go down the road and then you're having to change the dial.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't feel particularly great when you've got it, you know, on full assistance at high speed. Yeah. Works exceptionally well.
Now, what we did, we kept the original whole column assembly, moved it from the car, then re-engineered it to package the motor within it and keep all the original mounts and hide it as well as you can under the dash. You can barely tell it's there unless you're looking for it.
So no, it's worked out really well. I mean, to be fair, we've got like 3 mil clearance all round, and we managed to keep his existing fuse box location. But yeah, measure 15 times, cut once, I think was the theory there, and we managed to execute that spot on. Yeah,
and it's kept all the original cowlings, everything.
Yeah.
So it's get the column out, the actual shaft and everything, measured how much you want to remove, cut it out, machined up some fixings then with the splines on that then bolted in, profile cut all the flanges, tacked them in place, got it all in the right orientation. So again, all that sort of custom fabrication, what would possibly take you days to do was done in an afternoon because we've got the facility in-house to do it.
Yeah. We managed to replace his bottom bush for a brass insert, which obviously is a lot better.
Yeah, the original rubber nylon-y Vauxhall bush was just...
kind of seen better days on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you know, the overall process took us a couple of days. You know, obviously there was a lot of trial fitting in and out, but no, really happy with the way it's turned out. We mount the actual controller, which is quite a big box, just down here, which is again is out of view. But no.
Yeah, you've got a couple of larger power leads going in that are fused.
But you wouldn't look at that and go, it's got power steering, would you?
No, you jump in it and it feels like driving a modern car.
I mean, this cowl bit hasn't been modified, and again, it's, you know, a couple of mil off the bracket.
Yeah. The other danger you've got on this sort of thing is it's 1980s plastic that's, you know, 40 years old, gone a bit brittle. You've got to be extra careful on everything you touch.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure some applications, I'm sure some conversions will not be straightforward. It wasn't the most straightforward, but you know, and we've managed to keep it all in one plane. Yeah. You know, for motorsport, then obviously we probably look to put it on universal joints and allow the steering wheel.
We do it a little bit differently.
We do all that, but this customer was specific that he wanted it to be and look original.
Yeah, I think that's as close to factory as we could get.
I'm really happy with it. I'm stoked, really. It's and it drives the back-to-back without power steering. It just drives so much. Well, it's just like a modern car now. Yeah.
So everyone always asks, what does it sound like? Should we start it up?
Yeah, it can do.
that's just one of the many projects that we get involved in the workshop.
Yeah, so it's always a different day really. So, you know, like you say, we've got all different kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah, we've got an interesting one, which we're going to do quite an in-depth video, that's just behind the camera at the minute, which is a 90s F1 car, which you can have a little sneak preview of, but that will be coming out soon.
Yeah. So
there'll be a series of videos on that one, I think, and then some more on the Zero, the electric car projects we're on with. But, no, thank you all for watching, and any questions, any ideas of projects or anything, give us a shout. Thank you.